Hello and welcome to Top of the Progs live on Smile Radio. You're currently listening to Behind the Lines, the epic opener from Genesis' 1980 album Duke. I hope you enjoy it. Absolutely awesome stuff there from Genesis. I think Duke is definitely by far my favourite 80s Genesis album. And as you can tell by the opener, all the tracks are of that calibre. It's a really fantastic album from a fantastic band. Probably what was the creative high point of the band as a three-piece. Anyway, hello and welcome to Top of the Progs, live on Smile Radio, your weekly dose of prog, which is set to cure the Monday and weekly blues. I've got a lot of great stuff coming on this week's show, along with a huge news story, which is going to be the prog event of the century, which I'm really excited to talk about in a minute. First up, here's an absolutely classic David Bowie track from his hugely successful 1980 album Scary Monsters and Super Creeps. Now, for all those who don't know, this was this was one of the high points in David's career, where he was able to cross over the progressive, hard-edged sound of the Berlin trilogy with the softer, more pop style, and the blend sort of works really well, as you're about to hear. This was the title track from the album Scary Monsters and Super Creeps, and features some spooky anvil percussions and some fantastic guitar work from legendary King Crimson guitarist Robert Fripp. I hope you enjoy this one. This is one of my favourites. This is a song called Scary Monsters and Super Creeps.
When I looked in her eyes, they were blue, but
Absolutely fantastic track there from the late great David Bowie. That's long been a favourite of mine. I just love it because it just sounds so nasty and so nice at the same time. The first few listens when you listen to that and that album, you think, "Oh, this is the worst music I've ever heard in my entire life." But then you sort of have this sort of click moment in your head when you realise it's supposed to sound really nasty and horrible, and it's supposed to sound like someone's sort of scraping a chalkboard. It's got that sort of sound to it, but it's absolutely fantastic and I love it. Anyway, now let's talk about some of this week's prog news. There's only one real news story I want to cover this week, and that is that a Genesis reunion is finally happening. After years and years of rumours, sightings, speculation, along with plenty of fake news, a Genesis reunion tour is finally happening. The reunion was officially announced on BBC Radio 2 last Wednesday when Zoe Ball interviewed the trio, that is Phil Collins, Tony Banks and Mike Rutherford, in which the trio discussed their plans for the upcoming tour. The day before the announcement, rumours began to circulate wildly on the internet, with some quote-unquote sources who'd reported on Genesis News in the past talking about the tour and things like that, and it just seemed... There's always been rumours like this, but this time there just seemed to be so many, and I think it was The Sun who, the night before the announcement, they put up an entire article saying Genesis are getting back together, world exclusive or something like that. And BBC Radio 2 the night before also put on their Twitter that a massive band is getting back together tomorrow. So that was really exciting. The tour has been titled The Last Domino Tour with a question mark. Even though most will agree this is probably the last ever Genesis reunion. It was originally just a 10-date tour of the UK, which the trio had planned, but now 6 more dates have been added after tickets for the lead show in particular sold out in under 10 minutes. So the big question, the lineup. The lineup for the tour will consist of, who I've mentioned before, the core trio of Collins, Banks, Rutherford, along with longtime Genesis touring guitarist and extra note adder Daryl Sturmer, as well as Phil Collins' son Nick Collins on the drums. There have been many naysayers of this reunion so far on the internet, and it seems like you can't go 5 minutes without posting how excited you are about the Genesis reunion without someone saying, "It's not Genesis without Peter Gabriel, it's not Genesis without Steve Hackett." But in reality, all of that's absolutely rubbish, because all the sort of core Genesis moments which early Genesis fans love were written by this trio of people, such as most of Firth of Fifth, including lyrics, The Cinema Show, and most of Supper's Ready, so that argument can be debunked straight away. Anyway, it was terrific news for Genesis fans like myself, but Steve Hackett put a little post up on his Facebook, which he got a little bit cheeky and a little bit sour about the reunion. This is what he wrote. So Steve writes, terrific news for Genesis fans. While Phil, Mike and Tony prioritise the 80s, my show celebrates the 1970s classics, including the whole of Seconds Out. Very cheeky comments there from Steve Hackett. There was also a lot of backlash from fans, which it seems to happen all the time now, about ticket prices, as your sort of average ticket price for a good seat where you were in the middle and you're not right at the back was a whole £120. Now, you could get bad seats right at the back of arenas and stuff for about £70, but it's not the ideal place to be, especially for something like this when there's only a few musicians on stage and you've got something to focus on. Genesis also did something really controversial with this tour, which a lot of artists are now doing, because it's apparently because artists aren't making as much money from recording as they used to do, so they've started doing VIP packages and fan stuff and meet and greets. Genesis added this thing on the ticket websites called the Ultimate Fan Experience, which was like a VIP thing where you got to sit right at the front and you got a signed photo and you got a pass saying VIP and a bunch of other goodies like that. And this VIP package cost a grand total of £420 for the Ultimate Fan Experience. There's a guy on YouTube called Darren Locke, and he's been part of the prog scene for over 10 years now, and he's been reviewing progressive rock albums, and he was up in arms. He put up a whole video about this Genesis fan package sort of thing, dismaying it all, saying, why does Phil Collins need so much money? And his conclusion was that all the divorces and all the faxes, he's probably running up quite a hefty bill there from Phil Collins. This for me is going to be the prog event of the century. I was fortunate enough to get a ticket for the lead show on the Wednesday, the 2nd of December, at the First Direct Arena, and it still hasn't quite sunk in that the reunion's happening yet. Genesis also went with tickets an extra mile to try and ensure that the tickets didn't end up on resale sites, so they limited the purchase of tickets to, I think it was 4 tickets per household. But this kind of backfired, because you can still go on resale sites where they're selling, average price tickets for upwards of £400, which is absolutely ridiculous. It's really weird, this reunion for me, because I always it just since I was a young teenager and I discovered Genesis, I pretty much had it drilled into me by everybody that a reunion was never going to happen, and that 2007, it was 40 years since the band got together, and it was the last time anything like this would ever happen, and tribute bands would be the best thing I'd get. But no, it's happening. A Genesis reunion is finally happening. There's been loads of funny stuff online as well about what to call the tour. Like, my favourite was We Can't Walk, obviously a parody of We Can't Dance, and Old People's Home by the Sea was another favourite comedy name for the tour. Next up, we've got to play a bit of classic Genesis. This next track is an early favourite from the group's second studio album, Trespass. This track, for me and many fans, is the high point of the album, and it was one of Genesis' first ever Journey songs where they showed off their signature blend of 12-string guitars and electric instruments. This is a really exciting track, and part of this was played at the end of I Know What I Like, pretty much from 1977 onwards. This track is called Stagnation.
Sky tells his tale, but the only listening eyes are mine. There is peace amongst the hills, and the night will cover all my pride. Blessed are they whose smile from bodies free seems to me like any other crowd, who are waiting to be saved. best friend is smiling from above, smiling at my tears. Come, we'll walk the path to take us to my home. Keep outside the night. The ice cold knife has come to decorate the dirt. Somehow, and each will find a home, and there will still be time for love in life when you are there.
And will I wait forever beside the silent mirror and fish for bitter minnows amongst the weeds and slimy water?
I said I wanna sit down. I said I wanna sit down. I wanna drink. I wanna drink. To take all the dust and the dirt from my throat.
Absolutely fantastic track there from early Genesis. That's got to be one of my all-time favourite Genesis songs. I bought a cheap 12-string guitar just over 2 years ago with the intention of learning some of Stagnation. I've still not got around to it, but what a fantastic track! It really is one of the all-time early Genesis greats. That and a lot of that album were written around, I think it was early 1970, when the band rented a house in the middle of nowhere, sort of an old country house. I think one of their parents owned it or something like that, and they set up all their equipment in the living room. And there was nothing to do. It was bad weather all the time, so all they had to do was write, and craft new material. And by the time they come out of there with what would become the album Trespass, all the songs, like Stagnation, were perfected down to a T with all those little extra parts and things like that. It's an absolute perfect track from a great album by Genesis. This next track is a song by Canadian proggers Rush and originally appeared on their 1981 studio album Moving Pictures. The song is about a future in which the use of many old classic cars is restricted by the motor law, with the narrator of the song secretly taking this car, the red Barchetta, for a spin and experiencing the speed on some old country roads. This song, according to Rush's manager Cliff Bernstein, has more content in it than some feature films, and this particular version of the song appeared on Rush's 1981 live album Exit Stage Left, and features a fantastic lyric by the late great Neil Peart. This song is called Red Barchetta.
This is called Red Barchetta.
Great track there from Rush. That must be one of their all-time sort of greatest songs. And what I really love about that version in particular, and why I played that one over the album version, is just I love the audience in that version. Like I think a lot of that album was recorded before Moving Pictures had even come out, so during sort of 1980, and particularly that one. Can you imagine being in the audience as a young Rush fan and hearing that for the first time? And as you can hear on that, at the end of every section, there's a massive round of applause, more than what really gets at the end of the song. Every time it sort of stops for a bit, changes section, the audience is screaming. And I just think it adds to the energy, and you can just picture yourself there if you close your eyes and you hear the audience. Absolutely great version of an absolutely great track. Now it's time for this week's Hidden Gems. This week's first Hidden Gem was a song by legendary progger Greg Lake, and appeared on Greg Lake's second and final solo album, 1983's Maneuvers. This album was made, like his previous solo album, Greg Lake, with heavy collaborations with excellent guitarist Gary Moore. This song is a classic Greg Lake ballad, and it sort of carries on the 70s style of Greg Lake ballads, but with improved production and slightly different. His voice sounds really, really good on this one, and this is probably my favourite Greg Lake solo track that I've discovered so far. It's a bit cheesy at places, but I really enjoy it. This song is called Haunted.
Rainy days, closed cafe, drifting, haunting, hollow-eyed, numb inside, lonely and empty. I'm searching for laughter, for memories brought alive, places and faces and traces of you. Darkened skies, spotlit lies, aching, awakening. Words return, I can't relearn. Love is forgiving and taking and living in honesty, truth and affection, not cast to the sea. Chillingly inside. Lonely and empty, I'm searching for laughter, for memories brought alive. Places and faces and traces of you. Oh, what a fool I've been. My pride let you go. The eye of the storm remains chillingly cruel, silently screaming your name. Silence is pain. Rainy days, forever and always haunted by you.
Some absolutely fantastic cheese there from Greg Lake. His voice just sounds really, really good on that one, especially during the choruses. He really goes for it and really belts it out. It's quite a cheesy song, but no, his vocal on that is just absolutely fantastic. I really enjoyed that one. This next hidden gem is a really cool instrumental, which was the title track to the Alan Parsons Project's 1977 album I, Robot, and is about the decline of man and the rise of machines. This song is called I, Robot. Great stuff there from the Alan Parsons project from iRobot. A really good album if you've not checked it out. I really enjoyed that one. Not as good as the classic sort of Eye in the Sky, but still really enjoyable stuff from Alan Parsons. Next up is a classic track which originally appeared on Supertramp's 1974 album Crime of the Century. I played this track a couple of weeks back, but I've recently found a fantastic live version of the song which I'd like to share with you right now. This is Hide in Your Shell by Supertramp live in Paris in 1979. Hope you enjoy it.
In your shell, 'cause the world is out to bleed you for a ride. What will you gain by making your life a little longer? Heaven or hell, was the journey cold that gave you eyes of steel, or sheltered behind, painting your mind to play Joker? Too frightening to listen to a stranger, too beautiful to put your pride in danger. You're waiting for someone to understand you, but you got demons in your closet, and you're screaming out to stop it. Saying life's begun to cheat you, friends are out to beat you. Grab onto what you can scramble for, and let the tears linger on inside now. It's your time you gain control. If I can help you, if I can help you, just let me know. Let me show you the nearest signpost. Get your heart back on the road. If I can help you, if I can help you, if I can help you, just let me know. All through the night, as you lie awake, you hold yourself so tight. Oh, what do you need? A second-hand movie star to tend you. As a boy, I believed the same. The cure for pain was love. Well, how would it be if you could see the world through my eyes? Too frightening, the fire's becoming colder. Too beautiful to think you're getting any older. You're waiting for someone to bring an answer. What you see is just illusion. You're surrounded by confusion. Saying life's begun to cheat you. Friends are out to beat you. Grab onto what you can scramble for. Let the tears linger on inside now. It's your time you gain control. If I can help you, if I can help you, if I can help you, just let me know. Well, let me show you the nearest signpost. Get your heart back on the road. If I can help you, if I can help you, if I can help you, just let me know. You know I want to know. Ooh, I want to know. I wanna know. I wanna
Fantastic track there from Supertramp. That's definitely, without a doubt, my favourite track of theirs. It's just really great. One of the only things I think anybody can agree with Jeremy Clarkson about is how good that song is and how good Supertramp are. We're now unfortunately nearing the end of this week's show. I'd like to thank you all for listening, and I'd like to now end this week's show with a classic piece of Genesis in light of this week's fantastic news. This is Afterglow live in 1981. Thank you all for listening. Hope you have a good week. Goodbye.
Like the dust that settles all around me, I must find a new home. The waves and holes that used to give me shelter, they're all as one to me now. But I would search everywhere just to hear your call. I'll walk upon stranger roads than this one, in a world I used to know before, 'cause I miss you more. Sun reflecting off my pillow, bringing the warmth of new life. Oh, 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 and the sound